The Starfield Direct gave us a lot of great information about the game, but even a week later, we're still getting these bits of drip-fed information to all of us to satisfy leading up towards the release. So I have 7 news stories all put together nicely in one place. If you're looking to catch up on the latest Starfield news, or you just enjoy joining in on discussion about the game, you're in the right place. Sit back, get comfortable as we hop into 7 news stories, some good, some bad. I hope you enjoy. We all know that Starfield is one of the most important projects, not just to Bethesda, but to Xbox as well. It's their biggest game release for this console generation so far, and you see a massive amount of support coming from Xbox to Bethesda, one of which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in one of our stories, but through things like the headset, the custom headset that's never been done before for any other game, or even the controller is taking on, as far as I understand, the transparent triggers is completely unique. Although you have custom controllers, none the way the Starfield one has been designed. So there's a lot of support going to Bethesda from Xbox for Starfield, but it seems like it's paying off, at least in a commercial sense. Starfield does seem like it's going to be a success, as after the Starfield Direct, it was hitting the #1 top-selling game on Steam for some time. And even if you look today, a little over a week after the event, it's still sitting pretty at number 7, behind games like Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered, which it is worth mentioning. These, I do believe, are the steepest sales that the games have had since they released on PC, which is probably factoring into some people buying it now. But in addition, you also have sold out Constellation editions right after the Direct. I wasn't able to find one. I still can't find one. So there is that side of things, which is good for the game. You can tell that there's a lot of effort going into it, a lot of passion going in behind this, but you also get the other side of it, which is people who are a little bit angry. Some people angry probably because of the exclusivity, other people angry because it's coming from Bethesda and they just don't want to accept that Bethesda can make a good game after Fallout 76. Whatever the case might be, one user was able to sneak onto Metacritic and review bomb the game before it even got released. Now, if you check Metacritic, the Xbox Series X and the PC versions have 0 reviews, so it was removed. But just something to keep in mind as we do actually get to the reviews for Starfield. The reason I wanted to highlight this story isn't so much the Metacritic or the review bomb side of things, but if you do have the opportunity, whether you pay for the $1 deal to get Xbox Game Pass, or you just buy it for 1 month to try out Starfield, come to your own conclusion. There's going to be a lot of review bombs, I'm sure, for Starfield, simply because people are angry when it does release. There's going to be a lot of people who simply don't like the game. That's totally fine. Either try the game out for yourself or take it from multiple different reviewers with different perspectives, the ones that you trust and some outside of that maybe that you haven't watched before, and make a conclusion from multiple different sources about this game. But again, if you can, try out the game for yourself, see if you like it, and come to your own conclusions. Not directly related to Starfield, but it's relevant to Bethesda and Starfield 2, perhaps, if we want to think that far. I don't, but we're going to for the sake of this video. Todd Howard, during an interview with IGN's Ryan McCaffrey, announced that Elder Scrolls 6 might be his last Elder Scrolls game. Now, I can speak for myself and many others when I say I don't know a Bethesda Game Studios without Todd Howard, and I know that BGS is a lot more than just one person. He has an incredible team of really talented people who help bring these ideas to life, and Todd Howard is just one piece. But I do think you need good leadership from the top down to inspire and direct these great ideas so they actually do come to life in the way that they're envisioned. I'm sure a title like Anthem, throughout the process, it just didn't have clear enough direction and it came out not what it was intended to be. That happens. So you do need strong leadership at the top. It's going to be big shoes to fill, whoever takes over that position for Todd Howard, but hopefully they're ready for the task and they have that passion to fuel the games that Todd Howard makes, and they could continue that legacy in a positive direction for Bethesda Game Studios. But we do know that games are taking 6 years to develop these days. Matt Booty said that's the average time for game development. It's no longer these 3 or 4 year development cycles. Does raise into question, at least for me, whether or not it's worth these 100+ hour experiences, or if games should be shrunken down a little bit smaller in scope to aim for a 45 to a 60-hour experience. What I will say is, if anybody is criticizing a game based on its length, please don't listen to them. It's one of the dumbest arguments. I'm seeing a lot of that with Avowed, and I just simply do not agree. You can dislike things about that game, but the time to beat should not be a critical factor. Hopefully, and we've seen Todd Howard bring it up in the past, trying to shrink the time between game releases down. I do hope they find a way to do that. I personally don't mind the 2.5 type games. You look at something like Fallout New Vegas or like Batman Arkham Origins that uses the same systems and the same backdrop, but expands on the ideas a little bit, takes it in its own direction, while giving us a sequel that has new mechanics, new lore, new story, new quests, and all of the great stuff that we do enjoy about sequels are there, but it has that same framework. If that's what it takes to see Elder Scrolls 7 come to fruition before 30 years pass, then I think it's worth it. At least in my opinion, but let me know your thoughts down below. Back to the specific Starfield news. Exciting information about the polish and the release date of Starfield. We have an interview coming from Matt Booty and Giant Bomb. Have a listen to this clip yourself.
Every QA person in our entire company,
state of Washington,
like playing Starfield right now, looking at bug counts, looking at quality and where we are. The nice thing about what we showed today, from my perspective, is that was the game.
You know, working with Todd and the team, I see bug counts, and you know, just say that just by the numbers, if it shipped today, this would be the, you know, have the fewest bugs that any game from Bethesda has ever shipped with. And if it was today.
Now, it is worth mentioning the most polished Bethesda game ever released compared to its former most polished game, I guess, is really not saying that much, and I'll take that criticism. It's totally fair, but we do see the amount of resources that are pouring into Starfield directly from Xbox itself, and this is what I was hinting at earlier. Again, this is one of Xbox's most important games for this console generation, and it shows. Now, am I expecting a perfectly bug-free game? Absolutely not. When you have a title as massive in scope as Starfield is, where you do have the ship combat, the ground combat, the ship customization, the outpost building, the weapons crafting, all the RPG mechanics, the amount of quests that this game does have, the massive cities that are present, the procedural generation that's taking place, and the 1,000 planets to explore, there's a lot that can go wrong because there's so many systems interacting with one another. But what we do know, on top of the amount of help and assistance that Xbox is providing to Bethesda Game Studios, it has been reported that this past year of development, the reason for this delay for Starfield is largely because the game's getting polished. So even without all of those additional resources, the focus of this game has been put on polish. And now, because they have the availability of Xbox's support, that might be why we're seeing some of the added benefits, like the better lighting systems, like the improved character models, like the overhauled cities. There's these comparisons that you could see between the original showing of the game to now the 2023 Starfield Direct showcase. The gunplay has improved, and all those things on top of that 1 year time. Again, it makes a massive difference. Now, I will admit I am a little bit worried about some of these comments backfiring a bit on Microsoft. Comments like the most polished Bethesda game ever tied to a reel or a compilation of bugs that players have been experiencing, and everybody might get the wrong impression of what the game actually is, because with the power, the reach of social media and what it can do these days, those compilations will pop up. People will believe that this is what the game is, even though it's only being experienced by a small fraction of the community. That's not to undermine bugs being present in the game, but if it's only this small section of the community amongst millions upon millions of players who are having a largely polished experience, that's truly an outlier in that instance, and it's not representative of the majority of experiences that players are having. Again, it does tie back to, if you can experience and try out the game for yourself and come to your own conclusion, that's always my advice. This next story is one that I actually do feel a bit of sympathy towards in a weird way. I'm sure that some of you have seen this petition floating around. It's now garnered over 2,200 signatures asking for Starfield to be made as a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Now, I do not feel bad about any of the reasons that are presented in this. I really hope this is just a joke petition, because it did give me quite a few laughs and I cannot take it seriously. But ultimately, the underlying takeaway that I get from it is, I have a PlayStation. I want to play on PlayStation and it sucks that I can't experience this game. That much I do sympathize with, genuinely speaking, and I'll get into my reasons why after the end, but this in particular petition does make some incredibly pungent points, such as Xbox and its 12 dedicated players do not deserve Starfield or any exclusivity. Not only are they arrogant and annoying, but since the showcase, they have been irritating. Or the fact that exclusivity is not good for Starfield itself. The matter is simple. If it releases on Xbox, it's a bad game. And amongst a bunch of other reasons that are contradictory in nature and make absolutely no sense, they do close off with this real zinger here at the bottom. Signing this petition is just the start. We need to go out and protest at GameStops and Walmarts on Starfield's release date. We need to submit legislation to our local representatives to force Microsoft to comply. We need to go out in mass and stop people from buying copies in launch date. Even better, go online and report every video you see praising Starfield until we make it exclusive for us. YouTubers like Mr. Matty Plays Bad Games, Review Fat USA, Lemon Juice, for Tonga Complains, and the Young Turds need to be canceled immediately. If you're a true gamer, you will support this and sign. Now, most of the signatures, to my understanding, are you need to sign in order to leave a comment, and if that is true, most of the comments are just simply roasting this whole petition because it's absolutely ridiculous in nature. But there is, again, the underlying side of it is I do feel bad. If somebody bought a PlayStation because they were excited for games like Spider-Man, maybe it's their favorite superhero character of all time, or they just love Naughty Dog games, or they're really looking forward to games like Horizon or God of War, so they went out, bought a PlayStation. It sucks that they can't experience this game that I'm really excited for. It's been my mentality in the past. It's still my mentality as a gamer. I think exclusivity sucks. That's not to say I don't understand the business decisions and reasonings behind it. You need to have these exclusive titles to draw players to your ecosystem. I completely understand. But at the end of the day, it stinks. I don't know if I need to say this, but even if this petition was reasonable or made sense, it wouldn't happen. I'm sorry that Starfield is not coming to PlayStation. It's just not going to happen. But if you do see folks online who are berating this game because of its exclusivity or are celebrating this game because of its exclusivity, I agree with neither. I would encourage you to really consider the same because we're all gamers and we should want everybody to enjoy the experiences that we love so much. Speaking of petitions, we have actually one that's a little bit more reasonable that's worth bringing up, which is localization of Starfield in other languages. And it's come to the attention that Starfield, as far as the listing, at release will not have localization for languages like Korean. Now, I will say if it's not available at launch, it's probably the type of thing that gets added in an update. We've seen that before in other games. I think it's more common for indie titles to have the language localization after release, but indeed, I don't know what goes into it, but I do hope that Starfield gets similar treatment because I know it's not just Korean. There were other people that have commented that say their language isn't there as well. So I do want to see more of that. It's a great thing for accessibility for a lot of gamers who are really excited for this title. Now, this next story is something that's kind of cool that I'm really looking forward to. As far as features for Starfield go, we're trying to confirm as much as we possibly can, and there's still some questions up in the air. I know a lot of people are still holding on to the hope that there's ground vehicles. There's others that are getting confirmed in really subtle ways. In this case, being able to trade amongst outposts that you create and setting up trade routes between them. This was originally discovered by a user over on Reddit. I'll have their name up on the screen, but they do mention in the game's description that you can build outposts and hire a crew to passively extract materials and establish cargo links to transfer resources between them. Invest these raw materials into research projects to unlock unique crafting recipes. It would definitely be cool to be able to see your ships out in space. If you know you have a trade route with a certain planet and you go to that planet, you'll be able to see these massive cargo freighters floating around outside. You hop on board and they say, "Hey, Captain, happy to see you," and they actually recognize and you can interact with them. I'm assuming that it's going to serve a very similar function to what we had in Fallout 4, where basically if you have two outposts, you can now use the resources of both of them in one singular outpost because they have that trade line established. I do hope it goes a little bit further. I would like to see if you need to invest a little bit into the cargo so that, yeah, you need to spend money to make sure that they stay safe, they don't get attacked by pirates, all that type of stuff. Obviously, it adds a bit more micromanagement to the whole outpost system, but I think if you're engaging with that type of thing, it's probably worth it for a lot of those types of players. Alternatively, if it's not in the final game, I'd love to see a mod for it. Now, I absolutely did save the best for last. In an interview with IGN and Ryan Mcaffrey during the Summer of Games panel, he mentioned how he was able to play 1 hour exclusively of Starfield, and I really wish that I could have been there to ask some questions, because they did take on some that should have just been common sense. For example, whether or not there was multiplayer in Starfield. It's been said multiple times this is a single player only game, and some of the segments that I wished Ryan would have delved deeper into, he just didn't have the time to. So the last snippet, he does go in and talk about the cities in Starfield, which there's a lot of information that came from that, but I just want to focus on this one element. He mentions how it's one of the things he's most excited and interested in. I am as well. So take a listen to what he had to say.
New Atlantis was probably the highlight of it for me, which was one of the things I was looking most forward to from when they've teased it before. It definitely had like a Mass Effect meets Oblivion vibe, like the Imperial City in Oblivion, the main capital city, where there are tons of NPCs around. You can talk to all of them. Some of them are just like, I don't have anything to say, but you can talk to all of them. And there's multiple districts. You get around by like a subway type system. Like that to me, it seems like the focus on the major cities. Again, I think I might spend dozens of hours just in those.
The comparisons that Ryan makes in this segment, comparing it to the Imperial City or the Citadel in Mass Effect, that to me is incredibly exciting news. The fact that this city is so massive, it has kind of a subway system to get around to different districts, that's incredible. It does make me think it will actually be a lot closer to the Imperial City, and that there's multiple loading screens in order to get from place to place. That's to be expected when you have this much density in one small location, and based on what Todd has been saying about the cities, they are monumentally packed with stuff. And that's a good thing. It does confirm at least a little bit, or solidify some of the comments that Todd Howard has been making, that Starfield has more handcrafted content than any other Bethesda game, and especially in cities like New Atlantis, that's where you're going to find a large portion of it. But it also means that we'll probably get a lot of really interesting scenarios, because Ryan does mention he could spend 12 hours or a dozen hours just in New Atlantis alone. And you might come across some of those events that take place that we've seen in Fallout 4 or in Skyrim, where you walk into the city and then there's some interaction or a conflict that's happening that you stumble across. You stop to investigate it, and then it spans this investigation that leads you to all different parts of the city, talking to the NPCs, learning some things, solving a murder, whatever the case might be. I love those types of quests. I like when they're self-contained in that environment. We very well will get some of that in Starfield. He mentions how you can talk to every single NPC. They might not have a lot to say. I do hope that it's a bit deeper than just the grunts or the need something that you often get from NPCs in these types of games. If you could at least ask for some gossip or directions or simple things like that, I'd appreciate it. But I think what in a way gets me even more exciting is understanding this is just one city. This is just talking about New Atlantis. It doesn't mention Neon, Aquila, it doesn't mention Sidonia, and that's if those are the only cities in the game that we get to explore. I'm crossing my fingers there's one more hidden one they haven't yet talked about. That would be pretty cool. And then additionally, you also do have, this isn't just the only places where settlers and colonists are. There are these locations that are crafted that are procedurally placed on planets that are outposts, human, smaller outposts that you can go off and explore. Todd Howard has talked about this in the past, and you could presumably pick up quests and talk to people there, and they have their own stories to share with you. So there's also those smaller settlements and outposts you can just stumble across. Really cool stuff, and gives me, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, a lot to be excited for with Starfield. So anyway, that's my news roundup for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to getting more information about this game coming out hopefully soon. We'll see. But thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.